A recent survey found that 1 in 3 junior doctors are actively planning to leave the NHS within 2 years of graduating, and another survey by the British Medical Association found that 40% of doctors are actively planning to leave the UK as soon as they can find another job. And as I film this video right now, we junior doctors are on our 11th round of strike action, and the main reason why we're striking is due to poor pay conditions. And guess what? The number one place and number one destination that a lot of junior doctors are leaving to is Australia. What is going on, guys? My name is Kenji. Welcome back to my channel. Hopefully it's not the first time you're watching one of my videos, but just in case it is, I'm a doctor working in London, and in this video I'll be taking you guys through how much I earn as an NHS doctor here in the UK in my second year after graduating from university, and comparing that to the salary of a very similar doctor on the other side of the world in Australia. But before we go ahead and start talking about the numbers, let's actually talk about why I'm actively making this video. The number one reason why I decided to sit down here and tell you guys about money and how much I earn in the UK is firstly about transparency. I think there's a huge benefit and a huge advantage of everyone being open about how much they earn and what they're earning in their given field. As you guys know on my channel, I'm very open about these numbers because I'm sure there's a bunch of you guys who work in different countries around the world and are actually looking to come to work in the UK. And also I'm sure a huge number of you are students who are potentially thinking about joining medicine and becoming a doctor. So I really hope videos like this will help guide your decision, because when I was actually applying to medical school, I really did not know how much doctors earn, so hopefully this will help your decision and career choice making. And the second reason is because we exist in an open market, and sometimes it definitely doesn't feel that way, but a lot of people here in the UK, like I said right now, a lot of us doctors are actually striking because of pay and are not going to work. So I think there's definitely an advantage in looking at how much doctors actually earn in other places around the world, because if you're a doctor like me, then it definitely is useful to know how much you might be earning in a different country, and not necessarily just Australia, but maybe I can actually make videos looking at how much doctors earn in other countries elsewhere in the world. I'm sure a lot of you guys are here just for the numbers and want to hear a quick summary about the earnings in Australia compared to the UK. So let's go ahead and dive straight in and tell you guys the numbers, and then later on I'll be breaking down exactly how much this friend of mine earned over in Australia. So here in the UK, during my second year of working as a doctor, my second year after graduating from medical school, my annual income before tax was roughly around £48,000. This does vary depending on what specialty you're in. Some specialties have more hours, some specialties like working in GP are only 9 to 5, but when I was working in hospital medicine, I was earning this figure, and that include working night shifts, weekends, on-calls and unsociable hours, and roughly working around 48 hours a week. So about £48,000 is what I earned across the entire year before tax was included. As I said, this averaged to around 48 hours per week. Some weeks I did work more, up to 60-70 hour weeks, particularly when I was on call. Some weeks I worked less, but on average it was around about 48 hours per week. And if we look at the actual post-tax monthly average, I was earning roughly around £2,405 after tax in my bank account. That is exactly what would hit my bank account. If you want a full breakdown video, by the way, of everything I earned as a doctor in my first and second year after graduation, I'll link those videos up here, but this is just a very brief summary. Now, if we look at my actual hourly rate, pre-tax, my hourly rate in my second year was £17.89 per hour, and after tax, that worked out to roughly £12.51 after tax, which actually hit my bank account. So that is the summary of my UK income. Now, if we look at the Australia income, I will break this down into a lot more detail later on, but as a quick summary, in Australia, as a PGY3, so this is a doctor in their third year post-graduation from medical school, the annual income pre-tax was around 108,824 Australian dollars, and that works out to around about 57,260 pounds in Great British pound sterling. But the interesting thing is, this amount here, £57,000, that was for an average of 38 hours per week. So compared to the average 48 hours that I was working per week, this was for 38 hours, so 10 hours less per week. And if we look at the post-tax monthly average, so what was actually hitting the bank account, that worked out to around £3,178 per month. Now, if we look at the hourly pre-tax income, pre-tax that worked out to £25.49 per hour pre-tax. And if we look at the hourly income post-tax, that worked out to roughly £20.91 post-tax, what's actually hitting your bank account per hour. So bearing in mind, this was for 10 hours less per week, but that is a very brief summary if we compare the UK to Australia. Now, let's go ahead and actually get into the detail of the video. But before we do that, I want to talk about some brief housekeeping first and some points to bear in mind when looking at this salary. So the first thing to mention is that this is not my payslip myself. I've never worked in Australia before. This is a payslip that was given to me by one of my internet friends who works over in Australia. So just bear that in mind when it comes to breaking down the salary. I also want to give a bit of Australian housekeeping, just to give a bit of context in regards to how the system works and how things work in Australia compared to the UK. So the payslip that I'll be breaking down is for a doctor who's working in the state of Victoria. Now, I don't know too much about the geographical and geopolitical things in Australia, but from what I understand, Australia is split up into different states, so kind of like America, and each state is governed by different people in different ways, and therefore how much you earn in each given state will vary depending on the state that you're actually in. And to explain this point a bit further, this chart over here actually shows you the different pay scales depending on the state you're in. So as I said, we'll be breaking down the state of Victoria, but as you can see here, it does vary quite significantly depending on the state that you're actually in. So if you do want a breakdown of how much you earn, then pause the video here and you can get an idea of how much each state earns and also at each stage of training. The next point to mention, to give you a bit of a context, is as I said, this is someone who's working as a PGY3, so that is the third year post-graduation from medical school. And if you actually look at this graph here, you can see exactly where they're at in terms of the training, along with the PGY1s and the PGY2s. This actually falls into the umbrella category of resident medical officers. So my friend is not a registrar, not a consultant, he's a PGY3, falling into the bracket of RMO or resident medical officer. So the third point to mention is that as you get more senior and as you get on more responsibility, your pay will vary. So from PGY1 all the way up to working as a consultant, your pay will also vary and therefore your responsibility will also vary. And like you can see in this graph here as well, as you progress through your medical training and get more senior, your pay does slowly increase. And as I said, we'll be comparing the PGY3 salary with me as an F2 here in the UK. So do bear in mind that point. I'm making a comparison between someone who's in their third year of graduation versus me in my second year post-graduation. So therefore you can expect a bit of a discrepancy in terms of the salaries that I'm comparing. So do bear that in mind. If I was directly comparing someone in their third year of graduation equally, then you can expect a bit more of an uplift in this person's salary that I'm looking at. In this state, Victoria in Australia, they're also paid every 2 weeks, not monthly like how we are paid here in the UK. So the payslip that I will be looking at is for someone who's earned across 2 weeks, and therefore I'll be doubling all the figures to actually make a direct comparison between my salary here, paid monthly, and the salary that this person got every 2 weeks. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the juicy part and actually break down exactly how much this guy earned over in Australia. Starting off with the ordinary hours, we'll talk about everything else later on, but looking at the ordinary hours, we can see that he actually was earning a rate of 48.49 Australian dollars, and apparently this figure is standardized across all of Victoria, so all the doctors in Victoria are getting the exact same rate, again depending on how senior they are, and that figure works out to around £25.49 per hour compared to how much I was earning, or I am earning here in the UK. I'm at an hourly rate of £17.88 currently, so a bit of a difference there in terms of our hourly rates. I want to take a quick break to please ask you to subscribe down below and consider hitting the notification bell as well. Only 8% of you guys who actually watch my videos are subscribed to the channel, which is a staggering number, and I really want to improve those statistics and those numbers, so please do me a favor, hit subscribe down below so you never miss another upload. You can also see here that he worked 76 ordinary hours, so 76 hours across 2 weeks, which works out to actually 38 hours per week compared to the average that I work in the UK, again being around 48 hours per week. So he's working about 10 hours less than I normally would per week. But interestingly, these are actually the total number of hours that he worked per week. I know above you can see that he worked 22 hours in terms of penalty. We'll talk about that later on, and also 11 hours in terms of night duty, but the actual hours he worked was 76 hours in 2 weeks. The penalty and the night duty hours didn't actually contribute to the number of hours he actually worked. They only added this on here in terms of night duty and penalty to work out his total salary. So don't worry about the hours worked in terms of penalty or night duty. The hours he worked across 2 weeks was 76, and that is including any night duty, any evening work, and any weekend work. Just bear that in mind. The total hours he worked was 38 hours per week, Don't worry about the 22 hours there or the 11 hours there. Now let's actually talk about what they mean by penalty of 50% and also night duty of 25%. So the penalty 50% loading, essentially what that is the pay they get additionally for working a weekend. So essentially he was paid 150% or time and a half for working on the weekend, and the amount of extra pay that he got working on the weekend was 533 Australian dollars, which works out to around 280 pounds. In terms of the night duty, so again, he got an extra 25% working a night duty. That works out to being paid 125% of his normal hourly rate. And for that, he got paid 133 Australian dollars, which works out to around 70 pounds and 11 pence for doing any sort of night work. And what I found very, very interesting is he got this amount here called Continuous Medical Education Allowance. And when I saw that, I texted him and I was like, what the hell is that? Like, I've never seen this on any of my UK payslips. And essentially what that is he gets an additional amount in his salary every single month that is meant to be for spending on professional education. So you can use that money to, go attend courses or pay for any, publications that you made, anything to do with education. They get this extra allowance per month, which is fantastic. 181 Australian dollars, which is about 95 pounds. And again, that is great. That's amazing. Being a doctor costs money, paying for your medical license, paying for all the examinations you have to sit, all these extra costs that come to being a doctor. It's fantastic that the Australian government actually consider this and give them a bit of extra money to pay for those things that you just have to pay for as a doctor. So now if we consider the ordinary hours he worked being 9 to 5 hours, if we consider the weekend work as well as the night duty work and also this medical education allowance, my friend got paid a total of 4,534.37 Australian dollars, and that is pre-tax, working out to an equivalent of 2,383 pounds and 51 pence. And for the whole entire month, if I times that by 2, that gives us a total of 4,767 pounds and 2 pence pre-tax. But of course, that's not how much he gets to his actual bank account. He does get a few things taken off in terms of deductions, just like we do here in the UK. So let's go ahead and actually break down the deductions that were taken as part of his salary. Now, of course, he had to pay income tax. So the income tax that he paid, as you can see over here, was 1,036 Australian dollars. That works out to about 1,089 pounds per month in tax, working out to be about 22% of his total paycheck. And when they say full income tax, essentially what they mean is in the UK, on my payslip, I have my income tax, but I also have my national insurance and my student loans all separate. But actually in Australia, they have that all together into what's called the full income tax. And as I said, that takes into account his income tax that he pays. It also includes the Medicare levy or levy, whatever it's called. So the Medicare levy is what they pay in Australia, which is sort of similar to the national insurance that we pay here in the UK. But they pay 2% for their Medicare, so 2% contributing to their National Health Service. That also includes any sort of student loan repayments they have. All of that is combined together to give a total number of the full income tax that we can see over there. But moving on to the very interesting thing that I didn't know about Australia, they have something called salary packaging, which is what you can see here. I'll break that down in just a second. In terms of salary packaging, they took away 474.62 Australian dollars, working out to about 498.98 pounds per month in salary packaging. And let's actually break down what that is. So salary packaging, essentially what that is in Australia, or at least in Victoria, you can claim up to $9,000 per year, which is about 4,730 pounds across a 12-month period. And that is of your pre-tax income reimbursed to you for certain things and certain living costs. So that includes your living expenses, your rent, your mortgage. That's what this salary packaging is. And essentially why that is very helpful as a doctor in Australia is that it essentially decreases your total taxable gross income. Hence, you actually pay less tax. So essentially, to kind of break that down a bit further, what the government does is they take a certain chunk of your salary. So like I said here, 500 Australian dollars per month. But they take that from your taxable income first, and then they tax you on whatever amount is left over essentially. So they take into account your living expenses, your mortgage, all of that sort of stuff. They take that from your salary first, reimburse it to you later on, or pay for those things directly, and then they tax whatever is left after that. So what that means essentially is that you pay less tax because they're considering the fact that you have to pay for your living expenses before they actually tax you on whatever is left. So that is fantastic. I really wish they did that here in the UK. Congratulations to Australia, that is actually pretty sick. And how that directly compares to the UK is here in the UK, What they do is they give you a salary, they tax the entire salary first, and then whatever you have left to pay, you then use that amount to go ahead and actually pay for your living expenses and all of those other things. So if we look at his total deductions for all of these things were 1,510 Australian dollars, and that works out to about 1,588 pounds per month, giving a net income, so what actually hits his bank account, of 3,023.75 Australian dollars. And if we times that by 2, that is 6,047 Australian dollars per month. Converting that to pounds works out to 3,178 pounds and 90 pence per month. And that is essentially how much he earned. If you want to see a full breakdown of how much I earned in the UK, then click on the link above there. But again, reiterating what I said earlier on in the video, this is for 38 hours per week. That's how much he's earning, 3,178 pounds per month for a 38-hour week. That compares to me right now, I earn around 2,400 pounds after tax, and that is for a 48-hour week on average. But not only that, I also earn around about 700 pounds less per month compared to my Australian colleagues. But obviously you have to take into consideration that this person is obviously a year ahead of me, so he does, and he probably should earn a little bit more than I do. But bearing in mind, again, 10 hours less per week and a bit more salary. And that is pretty much it. That is how much an Australian doctor earns compared to a UK doctor. I really hope this has been beneficial to you in some way or form. If you're a doctor who's just interested in how much people earn across the world, or if you're looking to move to Australia yourself, hopefully this has given you some insight. If it has, please do me a favor, leave a like down below, leave a comment with your thoughts about the differences in pay across the world. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on to never miss another upload. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.